I once believed that if I were to come close to death, my parents would be the first at my side, weeping openly, holding my hand tightly, and praying fervently. Yet on that day, they opted for the spotlight and the applause, celebrating their flawless son. I remained still in a hospital bed, my ribs fractured, blood oozing beneath the stark white layers of bandages, and bided my time. I waited for those who were meant to cherish me the most. 4 days after the accident, the first message they sent wasn't about checking in on your well-being. Rather, it was to inform you that your brother received a significant award that day, and you should feel proud. I survived that dreadful collision. Yet, a fragment of my being fractured from that instant forward, a wound that would remain forever unhealed. I'm Vivian, 31 years old, residing in Portland, Oregon, where I lead a design team at a tech company. Many describe me as resilient and self-sufficient, the type of woman capable of tackling whatever challenges life presents. Yet, on that fateful Friday afternoon, I felt as delicate as a crystal glass shattered against a tiled floor. As I was making my way home from work, an SUV barreled through a red light and collided forcefully with the side of my vehicle. The harsh clang of metal meeting metal reverberated. The universe whirled chaotically, and then a profound stillness enveloped everything. Upon awakening, I discovered myself in the intensive care unit, swathed in bandages. The doctors informed me that I had undergone emergency surgery to halt internal bleeding, sustained 2 broken ribs, and fractured my right leg. They remarked on my fortune in having made it through. Luck eluded me. All I sensed was the chill. In my foggy awareness, I inquired of the nurse, "Where are my parents?" She glanced my way, pausing for a moment, then responded gently, "They are still on their way, but we reached out to them immediately after your admission. Your emergency contacts are listed as such." I nodded, attempting to stifle the ache in my chest, persuading myself that they are likely en route from Denver. Perhaps they required some time to organize everything, or maybe my mom was simply too taken aback to pick up the phone. I sent a message, not merely once, but multiple times, every couple of hours, repetitively entering the same brief note. "I'm doing fine. I long to listen to your voices." There was no response. 4 days lingered in the chill of the hospital room, wrapped in a heavy silence that ached with unspoken words. I had no siblings apart from Noah, my younger brother, who my parents consistently referred to as the genius of the family. Noah was their pride, the brilliant beacon onto whom they directed all their hopes and dreams. In the meantime, I was simply their daughter, the independent one, never voicing discontent, never seeking anything. On the 6th day, an old friend of my mother, Elaine, came to see me. She resided in Salem and had learned about my accident through someone else. Upon seeing me sprawled out, she let out a soft sigh, placed the flowers gently aside, and murmured, "Poor girl. At least that day brought some solace to your parents." Noah received recognition before the entire state council during a magnificent award ceremony. I gazed at her, my mouth parched. "Could you repeat that?" "Oh, you were unaware?" Your parents shared pictures all over Facebook about the Young Engineer of the Year award, even live-streaming the event, and everyone commented on how proud they were. I can't recall my response. Perhaps I chuckled. Perhaps I wept unknowingly. As tears cascaded down my cheeks, all clarity faded away. It was as if I were grasping for light from the depths of a dark abyss, only to watch the ones I cherished most turn their backs and leave, drawn away by the allure of a gathering that awaited them. The physician advised me to concentrate on my healing process. But how could I mend when my heart was shattering into pieces? I truly wasn't envious of Noah, honestly. My brother possessed remarkable talent and an unwavering work ethic, and I have always acknowledged that. Yet, I was also a part of their world. I would embrace my dad when the storms rolled in and reach out to my mom whenever I felt unwell. However, in the face of my near demise, they opted for celebration and cheers. I'm uncertain about which pain was greater, the ache within me, or the understanding that I could never measure up to their expectations. After hearing about Noah's award ceremony from Elaine, it took me almost half a day to collect my thoughts and regain my composure. The image of my mom kept swirling in my thoughts, her bright smile illuminating the room as she wore the teal dress she saved for those cherished moments. And my dad, shaking hands with everyone, proudly presenting his son as if he had discovered a cure to change the course of history. I reclined in my hospital bed, an IV drip connected to my arm, my leg encased in a cast that hung uncomfortably as I tapped away on my phone, resembling someone on the brink of madness. You were aware of my accident and yet chose to go to Noah's award ceremony. I've been here for 4 days, and there have been no messages or calls. Do you really think that's normal? I dispatched the messages and then reclined, anticipating the response. My phone screen became hazy as tears welled up in my eyes. A reply came in at approximately 9 p.m. Vivian, there's no need to overreact about this. Noah's event marked a significant milestone, an occasion we simply couldn't overlook. Being in 2 places at once was not an option. Right after that, I received another message, this one from my dad. Have you considered the immense effort Noah has put in to reach this point? An award ceremony of national significance? Your stay in the hospital can be as long as necessary, yet this was truly a unique experience. I was utterly astonished by the words before me. I typed swiftly, my fingers quivering with anticipation. Is my life really less significant than a piece of paper with an award on it? I came perilously close to death. I underwent emergency surgery, suffered from broken ribs, and faced the agony of solitude for 4 long days. This time, my mother reached out. Her voice lacked the softness I had anticipated. Darling, please refrain from speaking to me in that manner. I understand you're in pain, but could you refrain from adopting a victim mentality? I held the phone, firmly. I am a mother who has endured tragedy, a survivor of an accident, and now I face the harsh reality of your callous disregard. That's enough, she snapped. Your complaints are wearing thin on my patience. There's a lot of tension in the air as the media hounds Noah following the ceremony, and your dad is preoccupied with interviews. I can't always be by your side keeping an eye on you. I became quiet. The atmosphere was heavy and stifling. The sensation was overwhelming. One more utterance and I would unleash a primal scream, wild and unrestrained. It seems I'm a weight on others. Please don't say that, she quickly replied, her voice taking on a gentler tone. However, it's essential to grasp this concept. Noah is the one who brings pride to this family. Every action he takes holds significance. What about you? You're doing well now, aren't you? Indeed, I existed. In that instant, I longed for the comfort of sleep to envelop me once more. At least in that case, I could have avoided hearing those words from my own mother. I ended the call in silence. The phone slipped from my grasp as I faced the wall, allowing the agony in my chest to engulf me like a raging inferno. The following day, a photo arrived from my mom. Noah stood on stage, proudly clutching a gleaming golden trophy. Underneath lay a caption, a source of our pride and joy. I chose silence and simply hit delete. Nothing else mattered to me. Yet my mind refused to release its grip. Memories I had endeavored to bury now emerged vividly. When I was awarded a college scholarship, my parents communicated with just a single word. Excellent. On the day of my promotion last year, my mother remarked, "It seems your boss has a relaxed demeanor." Noah stood apart from the rest. It's a constant festivity. There's always a picture on Facebook accompanied by captions such as, "This boy is destined to dazzle." I made an effort to suppress my jealousy. I had convinced myself that I could thrive without their acknowledgement. Yet today, as I lay amidst unhealed surgical wounds, an overwhelming sense of exhaustion enveloped me. I was ready to step into the spotlight. I propped myself up, wincing, but succeeded in grabbing my phone. I dispatched one last communication. If you ever selected me even once in your lives, it must have been an error. From this point forward, I will no longer maintain the facade. I chose not to await a response. After a long time, I sensed that I was no longer pleading for love. I experienced a surge of anger, yet my thoughts were more lucid than they had ever been. I never imagined I would encounter their faces once more, especially not within the confines of the hospital. However, precisely 7 days later, on a dreary afternoon thick with the scent of antiseptic, the hospital doors creaked open. My mother entered first, cradling a bouquet of white lilies, while my father followed, his expression tight, as though he had been compelled to attend. I gazed at them, a sense of emptiness washing over me. No joy, no anger, just a quiet acceptance of what is. Chilly. "Vivian, it's your mother," she said, a strained smile on her meticulously crafted visage. "We stopped by to check in on you." 8 days late, I responded, my voice rough and parched. My father coughed softly, as though attempting to smother the unease in the air. "Your mother expressed a great deal of concern. We have been incredibly occupied. The ceremony for the awards." I lifted my gaze, meeting their eyes directly. "Or was there another reason that triggered your sudden recollection of having a daughter?" Silence enveloped the room. The silence felt familiar. I had been immersed in it since my early years, a reality obscured by veils of insincere courtesy. I forced myself to rise, agony coursing from my ribs to my back, yet I was determined to conceal it from their gaze. I simply wished for them to acknowledge the true motive behind their arrival. "What is it that you desire?" My mother paused, setting the bouquet down on the table. "The focus is on Noah." I let out a quiet laugh, fully embracing my sarcasm. "Absolutely." My father blinked, his fingers clutching the edge of his jacket pocket with a firm resolve. "Noah is facing some difficulties. You might have heard that he was arrested yesterday on charges of financial fraud at his company." "What type of deception?" I inquired, though an uneasy sensation was already settling in my stomach. The authorities mentioned issues regarding unauthorized transfers and the manipulation of documents. He faced allegations of fraud and misappropriating investment funds. However, it seems unlikely that the situation is as grave as they assert. There must be some sort of miscommunication at play. I folded my arms, observing the two individuals before me as if I were a spectator in a documentary film. "So, what is it that you require now, Cash?" My mother gave a swift nod. "We engaged the top attorney in Portland, yet the bail remains exorbitant, and we've depleted all our savings. Vivian, could you assist? Only this time?" I chuckled, though it resembled the fragile sound of glass breaking. "What's the reason for me to consider that?" "Because he's your brother," my mother exclaimed, her feigned softness slipping away. I arched an eyebrow. "And who might I be? An unfamiliar face? Or a cash machine dressed in a hospital gown?" My father interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with simmering frustration. "Do you not feel any shame? Your brother is facing public disgrace, and our entire family's honor is being tarnished. Now is the time for us to unite." "Stay united?" My hands tightened into fists, the color draining from my knuckles. "As I lie here, feeling utterly abandoned, not a single call or visitor has come my way. Is that truly your interpretation of unity?" My mother sighed. "You're just too sensitive. Noah has never faced a situation like this before. Guide him through it, and life will return to its usual rhythm." I gazed at them for an extended moment. It felt as though my blood was coursing in reverse, reminders of neglect, of ceaseless admiration for Noah, pierced my heart like sharp daggers. "No," I declared, slicing through the atmosphere with precision. "Vivian," my father said with a low rumble, "I feel no duty to save someone who has consistently received preferential treatment and has never shown concern for his sister. Noah is not a 6-year-old who shattered a vase. He is a grown-up. He violated the law. He bears the cost." My mother went quiet, retreating as though she had been struck. "You're ripping this family to shreds," she murmured. "You are abandoning your own kin." I gently shook my head. "Negative. This family was never founded on authentic affection. It's merely a performance. And I've always remained in the background." My father's face flushed with color. "This will come back to haunt you, Vivian." One day, when we're no longer here, I interrupted him. "For 31 years, I've carried this regret, constantly yearning for the affection of those who never genuinely cared for me. Today, for the first time, I feel a sense of clarity and acceptance." The atmosphere grew heavy with stillness. Silence enveloped the room. My parents lingered for a moment, then walked away. My mother retrieved a tissue, gently dabbing at her parched eyes. The door shut behind them with a chilling snap, akin to the last mark on a tale that had decayed long before. I reclined onto the bed, fatigued but grateful. For the first time, I decided to stand on my own. 3 days post-discharge, I found myself back in my modest apartment on the 3rd floor of a serene building in East Portland, the location I previously viewed as my sanctuary, from the outside world and my own relatives. I believed I could finally relax, rest peacefully on my bed without the incessant beeping of the heart monitor or the lingering scent of antiseptics. However, I was mistaken. As I approached the hallway, teetering on my crutches and struggling with the key, the distinct sound of high heels striking the concrete echoed in the air. "Vivian." I pivoted. My mother. She donned the luxurious brown fur coat she reserved for moments when she wished to flaunt her prestige. Beside her stood my father, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on me with the intensity of an investigator preparing to question a suspect. I let out a deep sigh. "Kindly. I have just returned home from the hospital. Refrain from beginning. Shall we hold off?" My mother let out a near scream, her voice piercing the air so sharply that a neighbor cautiously glanced out through a narrow opening in her door. "Are you aware of your actions? This family is being torn apart by your actions." I endeavored to maintain a steady tone. "By declining to provide funds to an offender." My father advanced, his face tinged with color. "He's your brother, Vivian, a part of you, your own flesh and blood. How can you stand by and see him decay in prison? I find myself here on crutches, a result of someone disregarding a red light and crashing into my car. Meanwhile, as I lay in the emergency room, you were off at an award ceremony. So please spare me the conversation about family." My mother began to weep. Not soft tears, but deep, wrenching sobs, grasping her chest as if she had lost it all. "We've already lost one child, and now we're losing the other," she cried out in despair. "You're penalizing us simply because our affection for Noah is greater." I squinted, fighting to maintain my equilibrium on trembling limbs. "So you acknowledge it? Have you always had a deeper affection for Noah than for me?" "It's not like that," she shouted, then softened her tone as if the reality had escaped her lips too quickly. "He required our support more back then. And now, he turns to you. What about myself? 4 days spent in the hospital, completely alone with no one there for me?" "Does that not qualify as a necessity?" my father interjected. "This is no longer about you, Vivian. The family finds themselves cornered, with the press lurking at every turn, and acquaintances incessantly reaching out. There's a prevailing belief that Noah will receive assistance. The integrity of our family is on the line," I acknowledged with a nod. "Family represents the facade we present to the world. rather than the reality of children suffering in a hospital with broken bones. "Don't speak to your mother in that manner," my father interjected sharply. I paused, inserting my key into the lock. "You both ought to go." "Not until you change your mind," my mother declared with a firm stomp of her foot. "It's essential to stop this self-centered behavior. Now is the moment to show that you truly belong to this family." I turned swiftly, locking eyes with her. "I was never permitted to be a part of this family, Mom. For years, I lingered in the background. Now, you only recall my existence due to the state of my finances." My father advanced, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "This is your final opportunity, Vivian. Your lack of assistance will not be forgotten." I chuckled. "But let's be real. You've never offered an apology to me. What is there to forgive?" My mother shook, tears streaming down her face, lacking any real emotion. "It seems we've lost sight of who you truly are." I nodded in agreement. "I want both of you to be completely unaware of my life for even a moment longer." As I opened the door, ready to step inside, my mother seized my arm with such urgency that I almost stumbled. "Release it," I urged, my tone steady and resolute. "Vivian, you're ruining everything," she shouted. I gazed directly into her eyes, with an icy demeanor. "If you don't exit within 5 seconds, I will have to contact the authorities. Believe me, I won't look back on this decision with any remorse." They stood still for a moment, caught in the stillness of the moment. At last, my father seized her hand, holding her shoulder firmly, as though to keep her from crumbling. They pivoted, offered no further words, and vanished down the staircase. I forcefully closed the door, securing all 3 locks, then leaned, back against it, letting out a sharp breath. My chest ached intensely. I couldn't tell if it was the lingering pain of unhealed wounds or the raw exposure of my heart that left me feeling this way once more. Yet, there was one truth I understood, with certainty. I had made the correct choice. I had ceased to be a compliant specter. I was true to myself. I refused to allow anyone, not even those who brought me into this world, to breach my boundaries ever again. Just 3 days following the altercation outside my apartment, Noah Sinclair's name dominated the headlines of every newspaper and morning news broadcast. The headline on a prominent financial news site stood out in bold red. "Young CFO faces charges for money laundering and a multi-million-dollar fraud conspiracy." I settled onto the sofa, my right leg encased in a cast and resting on a pillow, a lukewarm cup of coffee cradled in my hand. I had expected this moment, yet the truth surpassed anything I could have envisioned. Noah was entangled in far more than just a handful of dubious accounts, contrary to what my parents had implied. He stood as one of 3 principal suspects in a federal money laundering investigation that entailed over 6 shell companies and millions of dollars being channeled abroad via anonymous accounts. The headlines were omnipresent: CNN, Fox, CNBC. They broadcast images of Noah in a charcoal gray suit, hands restrained, emerging from the FBI building in downtown Portland, his expression vacant, as if he were in disbelief over the unfolding events. Simultaneously, the roster of collaborators began to surface, featuring a number of high-ranking officials from Noah's organization. At last, the flawless facade has crumbled. My phone buzzed incessantly. Notifications flooded in from coworkers, long-lost friends, and even distant relatives I believed had long since forgotten about me. However, the third call that morning took me by surprise. A strange, yet familiar, number flashing on my screen. Father. After a brief moment of uncertainty, I finally decided to answer. Stillness. Then came his voice. Hoarse, weary, as though he had consumed a tempest. "Vivian, we must have a conversation." I reclined slightly, cradling the phone just inches away from my ear. I believed we had clarified everything. I understand your frustration, And I'm not here to point fingers any longer. He took a moment, then carried on. We. I require your presence. I shut my eyes, quietly counting to 3. Is it money once more? We have exhausted our resources. Noah will not be granted bail unless a new amount is set. The attorney has stepped back, funds are locked, and I experienced the loss of a significant client this morning. I slowly opened my eyes. Did he have a role in Noah's case? No. However, he stated, our family has lost its ethical integrity. My father's voice trembled with emotion. It was the first time I had ever heard my father, the man who always led meetings and believed the world should admire his son, admit defeat. Vivian, your assistance this time could help us salvage some of our reputation and maintain at least a fragment of Noah's image moving forward. I chuckled, a harsh and sardonic sound. What about reputation? Visual representation? Are you genuinely seeking my assistance? Or are you simply concerned that others will see we're not the ideal family we once appeared to be? Now is not the moment for assigning fault. No, it's precisely the moment, I responded, sitting up straight, my voice as unyielding as granite. In my moments of solitude and suffering at the hospital, you opted for the allure of cameras and the brightness of spotlights. So, now that your golden child's true colors are revealed, you come back to me seeking assistance? Not a chance. Vivian, your mother has wept herself to sleep, he murmured. She claims that if you don't assist, we'll lose it all. I have lost all. Interest? I stated with a chill in my voice. And if Mom feels the need to cry, let her recall the 4 days I spent waiting for a message that never arrived. He remained quiet. I softened my tone, gradually. Please refrain from calling again, if you still hold any respect for me. After that, I ended the call. That afternoon, an email from my mother landed in my inbox. I chose not to open it. It has been removed. In the days that followed, several texts came through at midnight. Lengthy, heartfelt notes, ambiguous regrets, intertwined with requests for monetary assistance. I did not respond to any. The investigation remained a focal point in the news reports. A number of executives had already admitted their guilt. Yet Noah continued to refute the allegations. On social media, Noah Sinclair turned into a punchline. Once a shining star, now a mere specter. The individual once celebrated as a genius now faced relentless ridicule from online users. I felt a sense of discontent. However, I didn't feel any remorse either. Maybe what I experienced was release? As I stood by my window, observing Portland dissolve into a curtain of gray rain, my heart felt both vacant and buoyant. After so many years, I finally found myself free from the turmoil known as family. I made a vow to myself. I would never go back there again. I assumed that things would settle after I straightforwardly turned down my parents. One Saturday night, while I was engrossed in reading news on my laptop, an email appeared, bearing a subject line that was intriguingly straightforward. From Noah. I gazed at the name of the sender. The address originated from a monitored inmate email system. For a fleeting instant, I nearly discarded it without even glancing at the words. My heart pounded with intensity, not out of fondness, but rather from a blend of revulsion, fury, and inquisitiveness. At last, I made the decision. Vivian, I understand that this might not be something you're eager to dive into, yet I find myself with no one else to rely on. The situation is deteriorating. I feel as though I'm merely a pawn, offered up to safeguard those in positions of power. I acknowledge my wrongdoing. I took part. I acknowledge my mistake. However, I am not the one in charge. I served merely as a conduit between senior leadership and the financial resources. They're placing all the responsibility on me, Vivian. I understand if you find it hard to believe, But I'm struggling under a weight that isn't solely my own. Your sense of fairness has always shone through. The sole individual in the family courageous enough to confront reality. Kindly. If not, for myself, then for my parents. Our family is unraveling. I implore you. Noah. I stood still. The tone evoked a sense of inner conflict within me. This was not the typical overconfident and brash Noah. No bragging, no shirking of duty. Simply, a revelation. Clear and urgent. My trust wasn't given right away. I had become resolute in my convictions. Yet I found it impossible to overlook. I reached out to an old friend, Julian, a lawyer I had known since our college days. He now specialized in financial law and had experience assisting with internal investigations at prominent companies. I inquired straightforwardly, if a mid-level employee faces allegations of financial fraud, yet asserts he is merely an executor and not the mastermind, is there a method to confirm that? Julian responded in under 15 minutes. Absolutely. Review the prosecution files and witness statements. If there is undisclosed higher-level collusion, it will surface in preliminary indictments or interrogation transcripts. Please provide the names and details of the companies. I will assist with the review. I forwarded the details, a sense of discomfort washing over me, as though I was unsealing a portal that ought to have remained forever shut. After a couple of days, Julian returned a PDF file accompanied by a brief note. This is worth your attention. Your brother may not be blameless, yet he isn't the one pulling the strings. At least 3 high-ranking executives are mentioned in the FBI's files and are presently facing individual investigations. Certain accounts through which Noah transferred funds were secondary channels, not initiated by him. Yet he still chose to take part. I opened the document, every line cutting deep, forcing me to face a stark truth. A multitude of pages meticulously outlined financial transactions, relationships among individuals, documented phone conversations, and corporate emails retrieved from the system. Noah had affixed his signature to numerous deceitful transfers. His name surfaced in forged financial records. However, there was also evidence indicating that he had been guided by others who took advantage of his naivety and unquestioning faith. I pondered whether he was aware of his actions, or if he deliberately chose to turn a blind eye in order to ascend the ladder more swiftly. I recalled how my parents consistently lauded Noah. Noah possesses remarkable intelligence. He was destined for leadership. With a bit more effort, his name will resonate across the globe. He was raised in a setting that prioritized outcomes, above ethics, where the pursuit of success at any price reigned supreme. It's no surprise he thought he was unbeatable. I shut my eyes, clenching my hands into tight fists. One part of me felt an overwhelming urge to hit reply and unleash my frustration at his foolishness, while another part simply wanted to inquire. Why? Yet I sent nothing. No responses, no salvation. Even if Noah wasn't the one pulling the strings, he still opted for that direction. No one compelled him, no one threatened him. He had the option to walk away at any moment, yet he chose to see it through to the end. Now, he stands at the threshold of his reckoning. I rose to my feet, drew the curtains aside, and gazed out at the city enveloped in a gentle drizzle. Some truths, regardless of their difficulty, must be embraced. And I had lost the desire to rescue anyone, particularly someone who never regarded me as part of their family. I assumed everything would conclude once I chose not to reply to Noah's email. However, my parents lacked an understanding of embracing rejection. If they were unable to convince me, they would seek methods to ensure I felt remorseful about my decision. A week later, I observed an unusual occurrence unfolding on social media. A cousin I seldom communicated with reached out. Vivian, Aunt Ellen just spoke to my mom and claimed that you're being so harsh by leaving your brother in jail. What's happening? A chill coursed through my veins. A few hours later, I received another message from my cousin in New Jersey. Your parents are spreading the word among the family that you harbor hatred for Noah due to jealousy and have intentions to disrupt the family harmony. How are you doing? It seems my parents didn't merely place the blame on me, they crafted an entirely fabricated narrative. They asserted that I had forsaken my family, labeling me as a cold-hearted individual, and, to my astonishment, they accused me of hoarding hundreds of thousands of dollars while refusing to assist my brother due to personal grievances. I ought to have been filled with rage, yet what consumed me was sheer fatigue. It felt like they were crafting a new narrative for my existence, employing the tones of those who twist and turn the truth. I had no intention of justifying my actions. I understood that those who had faith in me wouldn't accept their deceit. However, an unforeseen event occurred. One by one, family members I believed had long since moved on began to reconnect. Not to assign fault, but to offer me assistance? Aunt Carol, hailing from Ohio, penned a note. Vivian, I find it hard to accept what they're claiming. Your mother reached out to me once, seeking financial assistance after Noah lost $50,000 on a startup venture that turned out to be non-existent. After I declined, they severed all communication for 3 years. My cousin Mark reminisced about a moment when Noah held him responsible for the loss of client data during a summer internship. He nearly jeopardized my scholarship. Your parents didn't look into it. They simply instructed me to take responsibility to safeguard the family's reputation. My cousin Alina reached out. Do you recall Noah's 18th birthday, when they brought in a band and hosted a grand outdoor celebration, while yours was simply a microwaved cake? I recall. Your expression speaks volumes. Quiet, yet unmistakably reflective. I perused every message, every retrieved recollection. For years, I believed I was the sole one left behind. However, it became clear that I was not by myself. The favoritism my parents showed toward Noah went beyond mere indulgence. They cast aside everyone else to uphold the facade of their flawless son. I began to reflect, not only on the moments when my accomplishments went unrecognized, but also on the instances when I was characterized as overly sensitive or dramatic, just for having the audacity to challenge them. They always said I was overanalyzing, but it seems I was simply the only one alert enough to recognize that something was profoundly amiss. That evening, I sat down with my laptop and composed an extensive email to the family members who had contacted me. I appreciate everyone for their trust and for opening up with your experiences. I'm not here to defend my actions, simply to express. I'm weary of pleading for acknowledgement. I no longer wish to belong to a family that evaluates a daughter's value based on her ability to forgive those who have overlooked her. I hit send and reclined in my chair. Within, rather than sorrow, there was a strangely soothing feeling of release. I once believed that severing connections with my parents would result in losing it all. It was only by liberating myself that I could truly recognize those who genuinely supported me. The following day, I disconnected from all my previous social media profiles, updated my phone number, and drafted a letter to the building management, directing them to restrict access to my floor to only those on my approved guest list. I replaced the locks on my front door and set up a camera at the entrance. I had shed the fear of being labeled the ungrateful child. I was Vivian, and I had endured, without the sympathy of others. The announcement of Noah's bail release emerged on a misty Monday morning. A friend in the legal field sent me a notification, accompanied by a short message. Your brother's family successfully navigated the situation. He revealed all the details in exchange for a plea agreement. Shortly thereafter, the media released the specifics. Noah entered into a cooperation agreement with federal investigators, revealing the identities of more than 7 senior executives, as well as numerous emails and altered internal transaction records. As a result, his sentence was shortened to 12 months in prison, along with 2 years of community service, excluding any financial penalties. an unexpectedly lenient arrangement, given the gravity of the situation. According to a maternal relative, my parents mortgaged their second house in Bend to cover the bail. Whispers circulated that they had secured a private loan from one of my father's old acquaintances, a businessman notorious for his aversion to conflict. In any case, they achieved their goal. Their cherished son was permitted to return home until the official court date arrived. What about me? I chose to stay quiet, not a word spoken. No doors were opened, nor was there a backward glance. I formally requested that the building management include my parents' names on the no visitation list. I updated my phone number and severed all ties with their associated emails. Noah was also permanently blocked. No more desperate messages, no more frantic midnight calls from my mother, no more ominous threats of regret when we're gone. I had no desire to learn about their way of life. I had no concern for whether Noah would make the same errors again. Some referred to me as devoid of compassion. Some claimed I lacked appreciation. Some distant relatives have even branded me a traitor to my own kin. Yet they were absent when I found myself alone in the hospital, connected to breathing tubes and burdened by loneliness that felt like heavy chains. They had not endured 31 years under the weight of overt favoritism. They weren't consistently overlooked, constantly told that their issues held less significance than those of their brothers. I bore the weight of my parents' abandonment alone, and now I stood as the sole one courageous enough to sever that bond. Recently, I've been rising earlier in the mornings. I take the time to craft my coffee by hand instead of hastily consuming it from a machine. I enjoy immersing myself in books on the balcony, where the soft morning sunlight dances through the leaves, casting a warm glow on my damp hair after a refreshing shower. Gone are the days of phone alerts that make my heart race, and no longer will I be inundated with emails brimming with manipulation, complaints, or guilt. On a Saturday morning, I strolled around the lake close to my home and took a moment to rest on a well-known wooden bench. Next to me, an older woman scattered breadcrumbs for the ducks. She turned to me and smiled. "You seem to be in a state of tranquility." I returned the smile, in my life for the very first time. It was more than mere pleasantries exchanged. I genuinely felt unburdened, free from the weight of always being the perfect one. No longer will I attempt to validate my existence to those who have never recognized me in my entirety. There will be no more struggles for recognition, affection, or connection. I simply embraced who I am, and that sufficed. My apartment transformed into a serene sanctuary. The frames adorning my wall had shifted from family photos to snapshots captured during my brief excursions. Seattle, Napa Valley, Santa Fe. I started to explore forgotten aspirations, concepts I had once tucked away, to avoid mockery. I began exploring painting and became part of a support group for adults who have navigated toxic family dynamics. I had reached a point where my sense of worth was no longer dependent on my family's approval. I reconstructed my existence piece by piece, sturdy, indestructible. Ultimately, victory wasn't my goal. All I sought was tranquility. And I discovered it, not in the arms of another, but in the depths of my own being. Vivian's narrative serves as a poignant reminder that familial ties do not always equate to unwavering affection. Extended favoritism, manipulation, and neglect can compel an individual to make firm decisions for their own protection. Despite being branded a traitor by her family, Vivian opted for freedom over shouldering burdens that did not belong to her. In the end, she realized that true self-worth is not derived from the validation of others, but from the courage to set boundaries and remain authentic to herself. What are your thoughts on Vivian's choice? Did she come across as too distant, or was it simply a vital measure for her own defense? We'd love to hear your insights in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more moving and insightful real-life stories.